all of us on some level don't really think they're going to start arresting people over the stolen election of 2020. And, you know,
I don't think they have any evidence.
Yeah, no, that's right. I completely agree. I'm just saying, like, once you've made these statements and your administration is in.
Answer.
No, I remember. It was one of the most interesting parts of your podcast with him was, like, when you asked him about that, it was like he really didn't have anything to back it up.
If that was you or if that was me, I mean, if there was some reason why I knew that they did something and I could give you all the facts, I would have that ready for anybody.
What's up, everybody? Major Retired Richard Ojeda here. And Joe Rogan, a guy who started out as a stand-up comedian, is now this massive personality with a cult following. Joe Rogan's audience has always been the gullible and the sickos entertained by watching the gullible make fools of themselves. And what's really putting stress on the misguided MAGA mind right now? What's crushing those fragile little man-child egos? It's when people they thought were one of them start questioning Trump himself.
For 4 years, they've been telling him he's crazy for questioning the election.
Yeah.
So after 4 years, I'd have a tight 10 minutes on the election where I could just rattle off at you and rock your world with it. Like, these are the facts, Jack.
I'm talking about the folks they once saw as allies, even heroes, suddenly saying that loud, hey, maybe Trump's full of it. That's the kind of betrayal that scrambles their circuits. It shocks them because deep down, they've always expected blind loyalty. So when someone like Joe Rogan and all the people starts poking holes in the big lie, it rattles them to their core. And here's where the cracks start to show. Joe Rogan, the same guy MAGA treated like a rock star, the podcaster they put on a pedestal, is now saying out loud what Trump's cult never wanted to hear. When Rogan pressed Trump about the so-called stolen election, Trump babbled about ballot screwing and phony votes. But when Rogan asked for proof, there was nothing, no evidence, just the same empty crap.
We could go into this stuff. We could go into the ballots or we could go into the overall. I'll give you another one.
Are you going to present this ever?
Rogan spelled it out later. If Trump had the goods, after 4 years of being called crazy, he should have had the tight 10 minutes ready to rock the world with evidence. But he didn't, because there was never any evidence. The big lie was always a lie. And even now, Joe Rogan, of all people, is saying it. And then Rogan tries to cover his tracks. He shrugs and says, well, maybe there was some speculation. Maybe some shenanigans with the mail-in ballots. Electronics can be hacked. Shenanigans, Joe? That's about the level of your audience can process. Cartoon words for cartoon brains. But here's the thing. When you admit that there's no evidence, you're saying out loud what we've known from the start. No shit, Sherlock. What the hell do you think Benny Thompson, Liz Cheney, and the January 6th committee were putting forward? This wasn't fan fiction. This was evidence, hours of testimony, witnesses under oath, and mountains of receipts showing exactly how Trump and his goons tried to overturn an election that they lost. But Rogan doesn't want to live in the real world. He wants to keep chasing clicks off fake ones. He wants to talk about aliens and fluoride and ivermectin. Remember that? Tubes of horse paste clogging up emergency rooms across the country. Joe Rogan's podcast was basically a chemical weapon against his own listeners. How many MAGA morons lost their intestinal linings, puking their guts out because they followed Dr. Rogan's medical advice? And let's be clear, Rogan isn't a doctor. No, he's a stand-up comic with a microphone, and the fact that he can pocket $100 million a year for spreading garbage while his audience ends up sick, broke, and dateless is the biggest scam of them all. Yeah, let's talk about dateless. Studies show women flat out say one of the biggest dating turnoffs is MAGA guys who listen to Joe Rogan. Think about that. That's your legacy, Joe. Your podcast turned alpha males into punchlines. And why? Because those guys are closed-minded buffoons who believe all bullshit you put out to them. They'd rather quote a UFC announcer and former Fear Factor host like he's gospel than listen to scientists, doctors, or people who actually contribute something to society. You're not a virologist. You're not a policy expert. You're a comic who lucked into a biggest podcast in the world and then used it to make gullible men less dateable and more delusional. You've created a generation of guys who think they're rebels, but women see right through it. And while Rogan's rambling about shenanigans in 2020, he's silent on the real story, the circus of the last election. He doesn't want to talk about how Elon Musk greased the skids for Trump, or how swing states that leaned Kamala Harris before the votes were counted magically flipped red by morning. Rogan doesn't touch that because it doesn't fit his brand of conspiratorial theater. He'd rather keep his audience chasing ghosts in 2020 than looking at the real world rigging happening right now. So yeah, Joe, maybe the election wasn't stolen from Trump, but you're robbing your own audience every single day, robbing them of the truth, robbing them of dignity, robbing them of any shot at being taken seriously in the real world. And if there was any justice, you'd be paying restitution to every MAGA moron who got poisoned chasing your ivermectin prescriptions, every one of your cult members who wasted their years of their lives buying into your bullshit. Because when even Joe Rogan says out loud that Trump had no evidence, the big lie finally eats itself. The Pied Piper admits the flute is busted, and now MAGA's left looking around, wondering who's going to perp walk them next. And that is an absolute fact. Sappers clear the way, airborne all the way.